Okay, everyone, it is 12:01, so let's go ahead and get started. My name is Dr. Jimmy Nichols, and I am really excited to be introducing a kind of a short webinar series to everybody. We're going to try to take advantage of this whole COVID-19 situation and try to bring to you guys a series of webinars that you guys can use to expand your own education around equine nutrition. So one of the first ones is going to be on TurboMag BCAA, and we're lucky and very fortunate to have Dr. Bill Vandergrift with us here. He'll be actually presenting today. So Dr. Vandergrift is a PhD equine nutritionist, but more importantly, he's a horseman, and he actually understands the complexities of the equine athlete. His life's work has basically been devoted to solving unique problems through really specialized equine nutrition approaches. And we're really fortunate that the fruits of his labor are available to the public through Stride Animal Health. So I guess today Dr. Bill is going to unpack the unique benefits of TurboMag, which is an equine metabolic pH balancer. So for all of the attendees, as we're going through the webinar, if you have questions, please use the chat function through your computer. So there should be a little drop down to the right side of your screen that says chat. If you'll click that button, it'll allow you to enter your questions, type your questions into there. At the close of Dr. Bill's presentations, I will go through and relay those questions out of that chat box back to him so that he can verbally answer everyone. So I guess with that, Dr. Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dr. Nichols. I hope everybody is staying safe and staying healthy during this coronavirus deal. I've got one little disclaimer for everybody. I'm presenting actually from the home office, and we are doing some logging here on the farm. And it just so happens that today the logging trucks are coming right by the house, and we have 5 Great Pyrenees dogs. So you know what happens with Great Pyrenees, seed vehicles not supposed to be there. So if you hear any barking in the background, that's what's going on. So hopefully it won't be too much of a interference or disturbance for us. But as Dr. Nichols indicated, I like your terminology. We're going to unpack TurboMag BCAA today. But I hope that this is actually going to be not just a product discussion, rather it's going to be a nutritional principle discussion, and using TurboMag as an example of how we can address these nutritional principles and how we can help the overall health and performance of our horses. So first of all, when we talk about TurboMag being a metabolic pH balancer, why does metabolic pH matter? I mean, why are we even concerned about it? And through years of research, not only with horses, but also with other animal species. So by the way, this whole discussion on metabolic pH, this is a nutritional principle. And it's one that does apply to the horse as well, but it's used every day in dairy nutrition, beef cattle nutrition, swine nutrition, poultry, cats and dogs. So we're going to be discussing this whole nutritional principle, and then also discuss how the TurboMag BCAA addresses that. But we know from research with horses as well as other species that metabolic pH affects bone mineralization. The dairy industry in particular is extremely interested in this because, as you know, with these dairy cows that we have today, they produce so much milk, and they actually go from, when they calve, they go from 0 milk production very quickly to producing large amounts of milk, which require lots of calcium, as you know, and phosphorus and other minerals. And those minerals initially have to be pulled from the bone. And if that cow is not set up metabolically to make those minerals available, then she suffers from what's known as milk fever. And we don't see that in horses very rarely. I know there's been at least one case documented of a mare suffering from milk fever. But the principle is the same. You adjust the metabolic pH, you can adjust whether the minerals are being deposited into the bone or whether they're being drawn out of the bone. And most of the time with horses, we want those minerals to be deposited into the bone. So we're going to adjust our metabolic pH in a manner that's going to facilitate that. Metabolic pH also affects blood glucose stability, which is so important for hormone homeostasis as well as energy metabolism. It affects muscle function, and it addresses hydration. Especially with the coronavirus going around now, if you get to feeling ill, what does your doctor tell you? What's your mother tell you? What's your spouse tell you? Stay hydrated. And so for our horses that are competing, especially in hot, humid weather and even in cold weather, it's very important for those horses to stay hydrated. And their metabolic pH is going to either work with them in terms of keeping them hydrated or actually work against them to actually stimulate them to become dehydrated more quickly. So if metabolic pH is important, then how do we go about balancing metabolic pH? And the terminology that's used is dietary cation anion difference, the letters DCAD. Now, this is actually a pretty simple thing. It sounds complicated. You know, we're talking about cations, we're talking anions and cation anion difference. I'm going to break it apart for you, and so you can see just how simple and straightforward this actually is. A cation is nothing more than a mineral element that you'll find on the periodic table, which has a positive charge, which means it's alkaline, which means it's going to raise the pH. And in calculating the dietary cation difference, we're really only interested in two elements, potassium and sodium. And you'll notice on the screen, both potassium and sodium have a little plus charge or plus sign next to them, indicating that they are going to be alkaline type minerals or minerals that will raise the pH. An anion, obviously, is the opposite of that. These are going to be negatively charged elements. They're going to be acidic in nature. They're going to lower the pH. And for dietary cation difference, we're primarily interested in chloride with the negative charge and sulfur with the negative charge. So the steps that we use to determine dietary cation difference is we simply take our two cations, potassium and sodium, and we add those two together, and we express those in milliequivalents. Now, I'm going to just explain that on the next slide. Again, for those that may not be that comfortable with chemistry, don't blow a gasket on me. Just hang in there and you'll see how easy this is. You don't have to really have a full understanding of that, but it's as simple as this. We take the amount of potassium, the amount of sodium that's in the diet, we add those two together. Then we take the amount of chloride and the amount of sulfur that's in the diet, we add those two together, and we then simply subtract the total anion from the total cation to get the difference. And that's where the terminology dietary cation anion difference comes from. So here's the actual equation. We're going to take the percent potassium and divide it by 0.039. Now, where in the world did that number come from? If you refer to your periodic table, that is the molecular weight of potassium. Likewise with sodium, we divide that by 0.023, which is the molecular weight of sodium. And then likewise, each chloride and sulfur, we divide by their molecular weights. That's what converts your percent potassium or percent sodium, percent chloride, percent sulfur into milliequivalents. So you simply add up the milliequivalents of your cations, you add up the total of your milliequivalents of your anions, and then you subtract the two. So if the result of that addition and subtraction then results in a positive number, then you have a basic metabolic pH, which means you're going to raise the metabolic pH. If that number happens to be negative, then you've got an acidic metabolic pH, which means your pH is dropping down. And that you can actually measure this in a live horse by looking at urinary pH, because the urinary pH is going to be directly correlated with the dietary cation difference. So if you have a positive dietary cation difference, then your urinary pH is going to be approximately 7 or higher, depending upon how alkaline or how basic that metabolic or the cation anion difference is. And if your cation anion difference is negative, that's going to reduce your urinary pH below 7. So this is why we say by adjusting the dietary cation difference, we can adjust metabolic pH, and we can actually measure that looking at the urinary pH. So as an example, I'm going to compare Turbomag BCAA with salt, and to try and follow these equations through a little easier, I've color-coded potassium, sodium, chloride, and sulfur. So for Turbomag, the potassium is 4.8, which you see represented right here. We divide that by the molecular weight of potassium. Sodium, 12.7, divide that by the molecular weight of sodium. And so we can go through this equation. We add those two together. We add these two together and subtract, and that gives us a dietary cation difference of 232. So notice that is a positive number, which means that's then going to tend to raise the metabolic pH. One of our frequently asked questions that we run into a lot is, people will say, well, I feed salt. So if I want my horse to drink more, which, by the way, is one of the benefits of an elevated metabolic pH, which is then a benefit of supplementing with Turbomag, people will say, well, if I want my horse to drink more, I just give them a little salt. Well, that's better than nothing. Let me put it that way. But notice salt is actually, if we can go up here to the table, salt is 33% sodium, 67% chloride. So when you plug, it's 0 potassium, 0 sulfur. So when you plug in your sodium and your chloride levels for salt into this equation, notice what the result is, a negative 452 is your dietary cation difference. So salt is actually an acidic supplement that's going to reduce your metabolic pH. And yes, salt, because of the sodium content, may stimulate your horse to drink a little bit more, but there's more to it than that, which we'll discuss as we go through. And that is, hydration is not just how much water the horse consumes, but hydration is how much water does that horse retain. And with salt, a lot of the water that the horse consumes as a result of putting salt into his diet simply gets urinated out. Whereas with Turbomag, because of the effect that it has on the metabolic pH, is then going to help that horse retain that water that he's consumed, and that can make a big difference. So the benefits of a positive dietary cation difference, or said another way, benefits of a positive metabolic pH. Increased mineral uptake by the bones, as we mentioned earlier, so you get increased bone strength. That's not only important for young growing horses, but also extremely important for performance horses. In fact, some of you may have seen it. Dr. Brian Nielsen just did a little deal in the horse where he's talking about, does lunging horses in a circle result in increased osteoarthritis? And he kind of skirted the answer a little bit, but he certainly gave his opinion. And the reason he skirted the answer is Michigan State, which is where he's from, is about to do a study on that very topic. But the point he makes is by working these horses in a tight circle at increased speeds, you put uneven pressure on the joints, which then can eventually result in some joint damage. Well, if you've got increased mineralization of those bones and those bones are stronger, these performance horses are going to be able to stand up for a longer period of time with less damage compared to ones that don't have the same degree of mineralization of their bones. That's the point I'm trying to make. Another benefit of increased metabolic pH is improved heat stress. And I will say that it's our livestock species that have done more research in this area than we have in horses. Those y'all in Texas and Colorado are probably quite familiar with heat stress in feedlot cattle. And we can reduce, or shall we say, we can't really reduce the heat stress, but what we do is we improve the animal's ability to withstand that heat stress based on the way that we feed them. And one of the things we do is we increase the dietary cation difference. And so we improve heat stress, which then in turn improves muscle function during exercise, extremely important for a horse. That's not only important in hot, humid weather, but even if you're competing in the wintertime and that horse is producing a lot of muscular heat, that heat stress applies to that situation as well. And as you improve in heat stress, you improve the hydration and muscle function, the hydration of those muscles, as well as the actual energy utilization and muscle function. Another benefit you get is quicker recovery post-exercise. And we have seen this so many times over the years, it's hard to count. But you adjust a horse's metabolic pH correctly, you work them hard, and they recover noticeably quicker compared to horses that haven't received that same benefit. I mentioned improved hydration. This is not only a result of increased water intake, but more importantly, retaining that water, not only in the digestive tract, but also metabolically, interstitial, within the muscles themselves. So that aids those muscles, being able to cool themselves. In the digestive function, it helps that digestive tract stay hydrated, reduces your opportunity or your predisposition to any type of impaction colics. We normally will use TurboMag on a year-round basis for that very reason. We want to keep them hydrated, or we want to keep the digestive tract hydrated in the summer. We also want to keep it hydrated in the winter for the same reasons. Different effect, but for the same reason. And so TurboMag, with its composition and its metabolic pH effects, does a great job of doing that. And also by maintaining normal hydration, that also helps support a normal sweat reflex. And that's especially important for show horses that are being transported. I'm sure all of us can think of a time when we've put our horses on the trailer, we've traveled for several hours or more to a particular show. We get there, we have to wait in line to check in and get our horses off the trailer, and it's 90 degrees and our horses are standing in that trailer in that heat after a long trip, and having them hydrated, having their metabolic pH where it's going to improve their heat stress and their stress in general, can make a big difference then in how they're going to perform and how they arrive at the show. So what is the effect of the cation anion difference with TurboMag? As we illustrated in the previous slide, TurboMag does have a positive cation anion difference, which, as we discussed, means it's going to support an increased metabolic pH. So here's a couple of notes and fall into a lot of the frequently asked questions. So I'll kind of jump into some of those as we go through. But I think it's important that this is a principle that I find sometimes people have a hard time understanding the difference. So I'm going to try and unpack that. Even though the same minerals, okay, that determine cation anion difference, primarily potassium, sodium, and chloride, are the same major minerals that you will find in an equine electrolyte, you really should not consider Turbomag as an electrolyte per se. And for today's discussion, this is the way I'm going to break these apart. I look at an equine electrolyte as a product that is going to try and replace the minerals lost in sweat. Okay, so we have a horse that's working very hard. He's sweated a lot, and through that sweat, he's lost a lot of potassium, sodium, and chloride. We know what the composition, or we know what the potassium and sodium chloride composition is of equine sweat. So almost all of your equine electrolytes are formulated with levels of potassium sodium chloride that are designed to replace those minerals that were lost in the sweat. That's not what we're trying to accomplish with Turbomag. So even though we're using some of the same minerals, we're applying them completely differently, different ratios, different levels. So the whole idea behind a metabolic pH balancer is to affect the dietary cation difference. As we raise the dietary cation difference, we raise the metabolic pH. Your equine electrolyte products are not concerned with that. They're concerned about replacing those minerals that were lost in sweat. So I hope I'm being clear, and I hope that kind of explains the difference between the two. So another way that I like to explain it is we use Turbomag to adjust the metabolic pH in our horses at rest. Okay, because it's in that day-to-day while they're not working environment where we are most effective at adjusting their metabolic pH, and therefore we get all the advantages of adjusting or raising slightly that metabolic pH. So now, if we have a horse that's been on Turbomag, and now we work them hard and they sweat hard, and we want to replace those electrolytes that were lost in sweat, now we can just use plain salt, or we can use an equine electrolyte on top of the Turbomag to replace those minerals lost in sweat, while same time maintaining our daily Turbomag intake so that we continue to maintain our desired metabolic pH. And I wouldn't be surprised if I get a couple of questions on that one at the end, and that'll be fine, because that is that's a tough one to kind of get your arms around a little bit. I understand that. Okay. So besides adjusting metabolic pH, what else does Turbomag do? Well, you've probably caught on that one of the reasons we're adjusting metabolic pH, we mentioned we're trying to improve heat stress, we're trying to support sweat reflex, we're trying to improve muscle function. All of these things are primarily related to performance horses. So performance horses are also going to have higher oxidation levels. They're also going to have challenges in relation to glucose utilization during exercise, etc. So we've put a few other nutrients and elements into Turbomag to help these horses maintain stamina, stay level-headed, and optimize their performance levels. So we have antioxidants. We've got vitamin E, vitamin C, selenium. We have a fair amount of magnesium in Turbomag. In fact, that's where the mag part of the Turbomag comes from, is from the magnesium content. We have chromium. We have the trace minerals, zinc, manganese, copper. We have several B vitamins, primarily folic acid, pyridoxine, and niacin. And we have branched chain amino acids, specifically leucine and isoleucine. So next, to try and unpack why these things are in there, what benefit are they going to do, let's look at some specific applications and explain why these are important. One of the first things that Turbomag is good for is for horses that have a tendency to tie up, even if it's ever so slight. And when we say tie up, you know, as we now know, there's lots of different reasons why horses tie up. We have horses with PSSM, we have horses with exertional rhabdomyolysis, etc. Turbomag can be used on any of those. In fact, if you have a filly that happens to suffer from recurrent exertional rhabdomyolysis, Turbomag tends to work very well on those particular horses. We'll work on geldings as well, but fillies just tend to be more prone to that particular disorder. But even horses with PSSM that have issues with metabolizing energy at the cellular level, as we've already discussed, Turbomag helps facilitate improved energy utilization by the muscles during exercise. So it does benefit other types of rhabdomyolysis or myositis tying up. Chromium is a very interesting mineral. It is now recently, or actually I should say, the chromium that we use in Turbomag has been recently cleared to be used in horse feeds as well as horse supplements. We've been using chromium in Turbomag for a while, but it was one of those deals where the FDA kind of said, well, we don't have a problem with that, but you do realize it's not completely okayed. Well, now it's been completely okayed, which we all knew it was going to be, which is one reason why it was never really an issue. But chromium helps to stabilize blood glucose levels. And when you stabilize blood glucose levels, you stabilize insulin levels. And when you stabilize insulin levels, you stabilize growth hormone levels. And all those hormones work together. So you get a homeostatic effect on the metabolic hormones, which then improves energy utilization by the muscles. And it's all related back to the fact that chromium's in the diet. As I mentioned, we have magnesium in Turbomag. That helps keep these horses relaxed. It helps maintain hydration in the digestive tract. And so that's the benefit there. And then maintaining that positive cation indifference supports energy utilization. Another aspect that Turbomag works very well at is the prevention of impaction colic. By keeping that gut hydrated, you're less likely to suffer an impaction. But I will say we have had several situations where we've had a horse present with impaction colic. The veterinarian's been called to the farm. The veterinarian will oil the horse, may actually run some fluids. The horse is getting a little bit better, but kind of slow to react. People stand around saying, okay, do we continue with our on-farm treatment, or should we load up and go to the clinic in case we have to open this horse up? And we've literally taken Turbomag, put it into a 60 cc syringe with applesauce or water, and drenched it into that horse. And within 20 to 30 minutes, not only is the horse drinking, but he's getting some obvious relief. So it's not just the fact that he drank more, that has to do with the fact that we're hydrating that intestine, which then helps relieve the impaction. To be clear, though, we're not saying that Turbomag is a treatment for impaction colic. You notice that I said that these horses were already being treated by a veterinarian, and this was simply one extra little aid that we could add to the package, which definitely gave us a positive result. So it can be used for that purpose. Transport stress. I kind of touched on this one earlier, but anytime you are transporting horses, they are getting dehydrated. They're going to be losing more water than what they're taking in while they're on transport. Now, some horses, yes, they will drink a lot, even going down the road in a trailer. But I think the majority of our horses don't have water offered to them in the trailer. And one of the reasons is because they don't drink it. So a lot of these horses that are transported long distances, we need to get these horses hydrated before the trip. And you can do that by dosing with Turbomag or feeding Turbomag just for a couple of days before you load them up and go on the trip. And you will notice a tremendous difference in their well-being and attitude and overall health upon arrival. And I'll say it again because this is an important point, and this is another difference between a metabolic pH balancer and a straight equine electrolyte, and that is that the features of Turbomag not only facilitate increased water intake, but they facilitate increased water retention, both in the intestine as well as the muscles. And that's something that an electrolyte doesn't really do, certainly not to the same degree that a metabolic pH balancer like Turbomag will do. And then also we get into horses that have a lack of energy or stamina. I have many trainers or many horse owners contact me over the years that, essentially say, I need something that's going to give my horse a little bit more energy, but, and there's always that but, I don't want them getting crazy. Or a lot of a common terminology I hear a lot of trainers use is, I don't want to raise their blood pressure, which is not quite true. You're not going to raise the blood pressure, but we understand what they mean by that. And Turbomag is a product that will accomplish that because of the B vitamin inclusion rate, niacin, folic acid, pyridoxine, all play central roles in the production of energy sources within the muscle cell. And B vitamin supplementation is always an interesting topic's not the right word, but interesting balance, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Because if a horse is stressed and his digestive system is not working the way it should be, then the production of B vitamins that they would normally acquire from the digestive tract is reduced. And so if these horses don't get these B vitamins from their diet, they can be a little bit short, shall we say, on their B vitamin intake. A B vitamin deficiency can change a horse's attitude. It can make them a little bit more hyperreactive, can raise their blood pressure, so to speak. By the same token, though, if we overload them with B vitamins, we can also create them or create a situation where they become a little bit hyperreactive. So there's obviously a balance in there. And so a horse that's he's compliant, but he just needs a little bit more stamina, needs a little bit more energy, but we want to keep his head in between his ears. Turbomag works very well. In fact, we've had multiple trainers, multiple owners comment that Turbomag has done exactly what they wanted to do. In fact, they'll comment that the horse is actually even more compliant on Turbomag than he was before they started increasing his training intensity. So it's another application that adjusting metabolic pH works very well for. Anhidrosis and pseudo anhidrosis. I think everybody is aware of what anhidrosis is. In other words, a horse that just doesn't sweat. Pseudo anhidrosis, I've run into a number of folks that aren't quite familiar or as familiar with pseudo anhidrosis. Pseudo anhidrosis in simple terms means the horse sweats, but he doesn't sweat enough in order to regulate his body temperature. Horses that are pseudo anhidrotic will tend to sweat in patches. They may only sweat under the saddle pad. They may only sweat behind the shoulder. And as a result, then the whole body is not sweating, so they can't cool themselves off. And then they have to revert to panting or respiration, very similar to the way a dog cools himself off in order to regulate body temperature. That can affect hair coat quality, certainly affects performance. And Turbomag has been quite effective in treating pseudo anhidrotic horses. I could say we've been probably more successful with pseudo anhidrosis than we have with full-blown anhidrosis. And again, I think most folks listening are familiar with the fact that I don't think there's a single product out there at this point in time that is 100% effective for all horses that are completely anhidrotic to get them sweating again. And so Turbomag's no different. But I think we do run about a 65 to 70% success rate, which is actually pretty good when you're talking about anhydrotic horses. And I'm often asked, what is it about TurboMag that gets these horses sweating again? And really, it's the total package. It's not just the metabolic pH balancer. It's the fact that we're increasing hydration, we're improving muscle function, we're regulating metabolic hormones, and all of those work together then to help these horses start sweating again. So some other frequently asked questions, and then we'll open it up to questions that I hope the people listening in have. But one that we deal with on a regular basis is TurboMag BCAA is bitter. How bitter, you know, that's a relative term. But anytime you've got a high level of alkaline type minerals in a product, it's going to have more of a bitter taste. Something that is very acidic is going to be more of a sour taste. Okay, so TurboMag being on the bitter side, how do I get my horse to eat it? Well, the first thing I'd recommend is just go ahead and put a whole scoop in their feed and first of all, see if they eat it or not. I have found it pretty interesting that horses that actually need their metabolic pH adjusted will often or most of the time readily consume TurboMag. It's almost as if their body actually knows that they need it. But what if you're headed to a show, you want to get your horse hydrated, you put the TurboMag, you know, into his feed for the very first time and he just doesn't eat it all up. So what do? What I recommend is starting off with only a quarter to a half a scoop added to the feed and let the horse get an acquired taste to it. And then once they start cleaning that up, then you can go ahead and increase it to the recommended dosage. And most of these horses will then start consuming it regularly. However, when we're treating a horse with full-blown anhidrosis, we are dosing or feeding a fair amount of TurboMag. We're talking about 6 scoops a day. And it's not uncommon for some of these horses, they will readily eat, you know, 3, 4 scoops in the feed, but they won't quite clean up those whole 6 scoops. So what we do then is we go back to drenching it in their mouth or using a combination of the two. We let them consume as much as they will in the feed, and if we need to get more into them, then we can simply drench it in. And I find that if you take the TurboMag and you blend it with applesauce, most horses don't mind that at all. Okay. The next one, do I still feed electrolytes with TurboMag? Well, I covered that earlier, but because this is a common question, I wanted to hit it again. So the answer is yes. And as I say there on the slide, hopefully now we understand what the difference is between a metabolic pH balancer like TurboMag and an equine electrolyte, which is a sweat replacer. So if you've got a horse that is sweated a lot because he's worked a lot, then yes, you can feed additional salt or an additional, commercial equine electrolyte on top of the TurboMag. If your horse is anhydrotic, by definition, he's not sweating. So you don't have any sweat to replace. So in that case, we leave those horses on TurboMag only until we get them to start sweating adequately. So how much of the electrolyte or how much of plain salt you use, you should regulate on a day-by-day basis based upon, how much your horse sweats or doesn't sweat, as the case may be. And then another one, will the branch chain amino acids, whether that's leucine and isoleucine, will the branch chain amino acids in TurboMag help my horse's top line? And the answer to that is probably not. The branch chain amino acids in TurboMag are not designed, or the level, I should say, of those amino acids are not designed to improve muscle hypertrophy, i.e. improve top line the way that your amino acid supplements are. So if you feel like your horse will benefit from additional amino acids in terms of building muscle and improving the top line that way, then you should look at either the difference or competitive edge, which are amino acid supplements. The branched chain amino acids in TurboMag are there to facilitate energy utilization, or shall I say energy production, and also energy utilization by the muscle cell during exercise. So when we put those into the product, we weren't thinking in terms of top line muscle hypertrophy. We're simply thinking in terms of how do we help this horse's stamina? How do we help this horse generate energy during exercise? And so the levels of those amino acids are in there at that appropriate level. Okay, so with that, I thank everybody's attention, and I will open it up to questions at this point in time.
Well, thank you, Dr. Bill. I really appreciate it. That was a fantastic presentation, and I think you did a really good job of hitting a lot of the frequently asked questions, because as we were going along, a few of the questions you kind of already answered. One of them was, and if you want to just talk on it a little bit more, one of them was if a horse is eating TurboMag every day, would they also need the electrolyte every day, or only when that horse is working hard enough to sweat?
Okay. The way that I have managed that situation is I will base how much electrolyte I feed, or try to, it's a moving target, granted, but I try to base the amount of electrolyte, when I feed it, how much I feed it, based on how much the horse is sweated. So, for example, if I've given a horse time off and they're just out and they're not sweating at all per se, well, they might sweat a little bit because it's 98 degrees in Georgia and it's got high humidity, but he's not really working from that standpoint. So in that situation, TurboMag will be sufficient to maintain his electrolyte levels and replace that. On the other hand, when I work a horse, and I understand that work is a relative term, but if I'm working a horse to the point where they've got sweat dripping off of them, and I'm going to give them a bath, to clean their hair coat up and such because they've sweated that much, in those situations, then yes, I will add additional electrolytes or salt into their diet to replace those that they just lost in the sweat. So it's a judgment call based on a horse by horse, day by day basis, depending upon how much they've actually sweated as a result of working them. But I will say, if you're not working them, you probably don't need an extra electrolyte in addition to the TurboMag. So that would be a condition where they're sweating because you're working them. So I hope that answers the question.
Perfect. Okay. Another question came in, just kind of asking your thoughts on pink Himalayan salt.
Okay. Pink Himalayan salt primarily is a salt product, and as such, then it is going to have a negative dietary cation difference. So as along with these same discussions, though, it's got a lot more in it than just the plain salt. It's got some other trace minerals and micro trace minerals, etc. If you feed that feed that according to the label directions on the TurboMag, you should be good to go on that. But again, I would kind of address the Himalayan salt as just another salt product. It's not going to give you the same benefits in terms of hydration, in terms of bone mineralization, in terms of hormone stabilization that we talked about, that the TurboMag is. So in a nutshell, just consider it another plain salt product with a few extra little added benefits. Okay.
Okay, thank you. The next question, is there an instance where you wouldn't want to feed TurboMag daily, or is there ever a time where you wouldn't want to combine it with another supplement?
One of the areas that, and that's actually, I'm glad you asked that question because I did not address it. Keep in mind what we're doing with TurboMag is we're raising the metabolic pH. Endurance horses, forgot anybody out there with that competes in competitive trail riding all the way to full-blown endurance riding. Long distance type work, especially endurance horses, actually creates a metabolic alkalosis. In other words, it raises the pH. So for endurance horses, you certainly would not want to give TurboMag during the ride, okay, or even the day of the ride. It would work great to use it on a daily basis at low level training. But once you get into intensive training and actual competing, you want to be careful that you're not going to raise the metabolic pH too much, because that's the natural tendency of that type of exercise. So usually just using a plain salt type product for endurance horses works well. So that's really about the only situation where we have to be careful with it.
Okay. Next question is so on the non-sweater protocol, how much will they sweat at rest? And if you're in a colder climate, is it a concern if they sweat at rest in the cold?
Usually not, because the problem is that the horses don't sweat with anhidrosis. So if they're sweating, from in discussing this from an anhydrotic standpoint, that's a good thing. When you say they're sweating in the cold, is there any way we can go back and forth on this, Dr. Nichols? I mean, are we talking about a horse that's just standing around in the cold that's sweating, or are we talking about a horse that's working in the cold and as a result sweats?
That's a good question. I tell you what I'll do. I'll let Christy is who asked that question. I'll give her a second to reply back through chat and clarify a little bit more what she's talking about there, and we'll hop to another question while she does that.
Okay.
So here's the next question. If you have a horse eating a fortified feed and the horse has a normal metabolic pH, does the horse still need TurboMag?
The horse can still benefit from TurboMag. There's a situation, if I'm understanding the question correctly, there's a situation where you can use TurboMag periodically. You may not need to use it every day, but a perfect situation is for transport. If you know you're about to load up and travel a long distance, you can hydrate that horse using TurboMag, a day or two before the transport, and it'll, even if your horse has already got a good metabolic pH, it'll still stimulate increased water intake and water retention, and it'll give you all those transport stress benefits that way. And you don't have to feed it every day to achieve that. So you can just use it on a periodic basis like that. Okay.
Okay, very good. The next question is, would this be a good product to feed to Cushing's horses to help with insulin resistance? So I'm sure that one is probably stemming from the chromium that you had brought up.
Yes. It can help support. It's not going to make any drastic changes in the insulin sensitivities in a horse that's actually insulin resistant. There's more things going on there than the stabilizing blood glucose and stabilizing insulin that we were talking about in a performance horse, but it can help. I mean, chromium, available chromium is a key word, can benefit certain horses with insulin resistance. And We could do a whole separate webinar on that topic. But how much it's going to benefit is going to be determined by how insulin resistant the horse is. In other words, are we looking at, insulin levels, somewhere around 20 to 40, or are we looking at insulin levels that are hovering around 100 or above, extremely insulin resistant? So the horses that are insulin resistant but not drastically so are going to get more of a benefit from chromium supplementation than those that are severely insulin resistant. In terms of Cushing's and insulin resistance and thyroid function, one of the minerals which actually helps support thyroid function is magnesium. And because TurboMag has a substantial magnesium content, we can help support thyroid function with TurboMag. So long story short, can TurboMag be beneficial for Cushing's horses? Yes, it can. And on our farm, we have got more than our fair share of elderly horses. They'll be with us for the duration. A couple of them are cushingoid, and we give them TurboMag every day. And my personal observation is it's not, it doesn't erase their PPID, but it certainly helps them out. And you can tell that from the standpoint that here we are in spring and that they've shed out most of their hair. They've just got, some of that Cushing type hair hanging off their belly at this point. And in years where we've not given the TurboMag, they act more like a cushingoid horse, where even in Georgia, it's already warm. They look like a cushingoid horse. So yes, my experience is that yes, it will help Cushing's horses.
Perfect, thank you. And then Christy did hop in. We'll just clarify on her question, and then we'll wrap this up. But she said, so if she's feeding 6 scoops per day of the TurboMag until the horse starts sweating, she's asking, does she watch for that sweating at rest or during work?
Primarily during work. So we have had horses start to sweat at rest. That's when we really know we're making progress. But the first place you should begin to see it is when the horse is working. You should begin to see an improved sweat reflex as a result of that. Okay.
Very good.
Good question.
All right, Dr. Bill, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate having you on, and we're looking forward to doing some more of these in the future. So everyone who attended, watch your email for a replay of this webinar. So we're going to post this. So there was just a lot of information in it, and I'm sure that there's plenty of us that could go back and rewatch it. So we'll have that available for everyone. And then watch your email for upcoming education. So we are launching some more webinars. We are launching some podcasts, and then also some articles if you prefer to read your education. So we're going to have a lot of opportunities coming up. Be sure to watch your emails for the special info there. Also, join us on our Facebook and Instagram social media channels. We'll try to post all of our upcoming education through our social media channels. And then lastly, those of you who did attend this seminar will be receiving a special discount, which you'll have to open your email to actually get. So again, watch your inbox. So again, I just want to thank everyone for attending, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. And again, be sure to join us. We're actually doing another one tomorrow at 3 o'clock over leaky gut syndrome. And I will be the one that is presenting on that. So if you want to sign up, if you have not yet already, jump on strideanimalhealth.com, click on the webinar link, and we've got some sign up forms there. So thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you.